Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a while since I've made you a targeted video that is designed to help you rank up. So in this video, I'm going to be revealing to you 5 secret tips that if you implement will instantly make you a better player and start you on the path to rank up one rank after the next. Speaking of ranking up from one rank to the next, I'm actually breaking down right now an in-depth Silver McCree VOD review, and I'm going to be posting it to the GameLeap website pretty soon. So if you want to get all the tips and tricks that's going to really help you rank up and surpass your limits, definitely go check it out in the links down below. Anyways, without further ado, let's just jump right into it, shall we? So the first tip I have for you, and it's something that you need to stop doing right away, and it could be holding you back from ranking up altogether, is you need to stop being an ult battery. Now, the traditional term ult battery often is referred to someone like a roadhog that just runs around the map and takes damage for the enemy, but you are an ult battery as well. And you might not even just be an ult battery, you might be an opportunity generator. And what I mean by that is you are setting yourself in situations where you take damage or get picked off, and you allow the enemy an opportunity to clutch up the fight just because you're not valuing your life and you're not doing these 3 things. The first thing that you need to stop doing is you need to stop peeking an angle that is outside your effective range. Now, besides general information gathering, peeking an angle at all that is really far outside of your effective range is actually pointless. You see this very often, like a Reaper hard peeking someone that is really far away from him, like a McCree or even a Widow. You see this even with Widows trying to peek someone close range. The important thing to understand from this is you have a specific effective range that you want to operate under, and there's no point in allowing an enemy opportunity to deal damage to you if you're not in your effective range and you're not taking engagements in that effective range. Another important aspect of this is fight an enemy inside your effective range and force them to be outside of theirs. An example of this would be not peeking a Widow at all as Genji until you're right on top of her. Now, you never gave her an opportunity to shoot you from a farther range, and now that you're right on top of her, she's perfectly in your effective range and she is not in hers, and that creates an imbalance where it's really easy to win the matchup. In a similar vein, you could be playing something like a Widowmaker, for example, and make sure that you keep your spacing on point to where you never are engaging a Doomfist or someone that has that close range, effective range, from a close range at all. You're always playing outside of it, and you position accordingly. Now, going back to the ult battery analogy, you need to understand what the point of cover, whether it's natural or artificial, what is its point? Well, cover basically protects you and allows you to get in position without revealing yourself to the enemy until you are better in those ranges that we talked about before. You want to be routing around natural or using artificial like a Reinhardt shield and transition from one cover to the next, allowing you to get into your sweet spot positionally to deal damage to the enemy in your actual range and try to avoid theirs altogether. Now, the next big tip that I have for you is that you can do more than just one thing. And this seems like a really obvious tip, but the fact of the matter is if you compare a high-level Ana, for example, compared to a very low-level Ana, let's say a top 500 versus a silver Ana, the amount of actions or APM is phenomenally different between both characters. Not just their mechanical skill, but the amount of actions that a top 5 Ana is trying to take is just going to be exponentially more. You see, while every character has a job, right? An Ana wants to heal up her team, and a McCree wants to deal constant damage to the enemy and look for picks, and a Ryan wants to create space. In between fulfilling your jobs, there is a lot of sub-jobs that you could be doing, and a lot of sub-jobs that could be bringing more value into every team fight. For example, an Ana at some point will heal up her team. Maybe they're not completely full, but she knows that she has a window of time where she could do something else besides just heal them. In that window of time, her teammates aren't going to get punished and die instantly, but she can do something else besides just perma-pumping the back of her Ryan, even if he's close to full or full already. You can take those windows and create opportunity. Do a pump of damage to the McCree on the high ground. Throw a nade to the back of the enemy team because you obviously don't need it to heal up your tanks in that moment. There are going to be tons of scenarios where there's something more that you could do. Across the board, after you complete your main job and you're doing your main job, keep in mind that there's always more that you could do, and be constantly thinking thinking about doing more or adding more to each and every team fight, and that will greatly improve your overall impact, because just doing your job is not enough to allow you to climb. Just doing your job is enough to not throw, but it is never enough to carry. If you want to carry, you need to go above and beyond and try to find more sub jobs in between doing your main job. Now for the next big tip that is a problem that is plaguing even the higher ranks at times, and it's not evaluating when you should push in. A big mistake that players often make is they don't think about evaluating their team's strengths versus the enemy team's strengths. So there are a lot of different things that can happen, or catalysts that you need to take into mind when you're deciding whether or not to go in or retreat. For example, if the enemy is down one person, you have advantage. You can take space on the enemy, you could push up. They don't have as much damage or heals or space created because one of their tanks are dead. That is an obvious advantage, and you should be pushing up accordingly. But there's other examples where maybe it's not so obvious, but you still need to identify those scenarios. So like, what if your Genji is blading? Do you think that it's your job to stand in the back and just wait for the Genji to kill everybody and then go in? No, that is a catalyst that shows that you have some sort of advantage. The advantage is you have a cyber ninja going into the enemy team trying to do damage, and that is your go ahead to push in as well. When your team pushes generally, you need to be going in to not only go in with your advantage, but to also create space and help the people that are going with their ultimates find value. Now, in addition to this, when you have overwhelming advantage, like 6 of you are alive and there's only 3 of the enemies that are alive, you need to be pushing so far out to just kill them and make them all force reset. If you have such an overwhelming advantage, then finishing off the enemy is extremely important, and it's something that you should try to do each and every time. Now, the inverse to all this is also true. Let's say you go into a team fight and the enemy kills one of your members. Now you're at a 5v6. Now, what you need to be doing is actually giving up space in proportion to the amount of damage the enemy has. You cannot be trying to overlap the enemy's space if you're down members. The reason of this is you got to think about one team fighting first versus another, and let's say that each side has a number, right? Let's say a full fighting force is 100 versus 100, but you lose somebody and you lose a little bit of that percentage. Well, now what you want to do is you want to be backing out. You still could be looking for opportunity if you want to, or you could potentially reset altogether. Now, an important big takeaway here is that the catalysts that we talked about, specifically ultimate catalysts, those are actually worth percentages or numbers in that bubble of overall team value. So something like a graviton could make up for the lack of a member. Something like a nano blade can overcome the numbers advantage, inherent advantage that the other team has. So ultimately, the macro understanding of this is push forward and take space when you have advantage, and give up space when you have weakness, and then always keep in mind that you have these ultimates in your back pocket that can overcome a disadvantage or become the catalyst that pushes your team parity or slight advantage into an overwhelming one and allow you to win the team fight altogether. Now, the next big tip that I have for you, and this has become extremely apparent, especially as I've been VOD reviewing some different low-level hit scan players. I'm going to put all the VODs on the GameLeap website, so definitely go check that out. It's going to be up there in a couple of days. But the thing that I've noticed more than anything is that a lot of hit scan players completely move like a psycho. So what do I mean by moving like a psycho? Well, it's almost as if there's a huge misunderstanding in what the point of movement even is. I will often see McCrees that will juke, crouch, left, right spam 24/7 when no one is even shooting at them. You need to ask yourself, what is the point of crouch spamming in the first place? Well, crouch spamming has to do with hitbox manipulation. It makes it very difficult for enemies to headshot you. When you're up against a Zarya that can't headshot, or a Pharah, or a Junkrat, what are you crouch spamming like crazy for? If you're fighting a Pharah who does really slow rocket splash damage, why are you moving left and right, juking left, right, back and forth if you're trying to dodge a Pharah rocket? It simply doesn't make sense. All you're doing is actually hurting your own mechanical aim. And this is a big takeaway that you need to understand. When you're trying to hit a shot and you're not trying to actively juke what they're doing, you should definitely either 1, be standing still, or 2, move in a way that is very easy for you to course correct. This means long strafes. This means standing completely still. And the reason you do this is because if there's nothing that you could personally do movement-wise in order to make it harder for the enemy to hit you, or there's no reason for you to try to juke them or dodge them, then there's no point in you inversely messing up your aim way worse than you're ever going to be affecting the enemy's aim. And this is a big problem because when I VOD review a lot of players, hit scan players, even some high level ones sometimes, they make it so much harder on themselves where they actually have legitimately good aim. They have legitimately good mechanical skill, but they're like putting ankle weights on themselves, or I guess in this case, they're putting finger weights or something like that, and just making it way harder for them to actually transfer their mechanical skill into in-game action because of all this unnecessary juking and movement that they're applying to their games. Now, the last big tip that I'm gonna have for you, and this is crazy, this is a crazy tip that I really realized after playing Valorant of all things, is you need to become a student of the Killfeed. The reason I say I learned this from Valorant, I don't know if any of you have played it, but if you have, if you die randomly from an enemy, there's no kill feed. You just die, you have no idea how you died. You're just like, okay, I'm dead. You don't get to watch the enemy, you just know that you're dead. Well, after realizing just how much information I was missing out on when I didn't have a kill feed, I realized how much we're taking the kill feed for granted in Overwatch. It is some of the most valuable information imaginable. Every time you die, you get to see where the enemy was set up before your death, whether it was a Doomfist that was rolling out from the high ground, or was he coming from a flank, or was he hiding in a corner. You get to see exactly how close you were to winning the matchup. Did you miss a little bit of shots, or how did your movement look to the enemy team? Were you just moving in a way that was just comically unnecessary? Every single time you watch a kill cam, you can learn something about not only your play, but the enemy's play, and that can compound over the course of many, many games. In addition to that, you get to easily know how much ultimate charge the enemy has. You get to know things like their cooldowns, their positioning. There's just so much that you can learn, and also there's so much that you can communicate to your team. You could say, hey, there's a McCree on this high ground, or hey, there's a McCree in this building, or whatever. Even if you died suddenly, you can take the kill cam and apply that information to be actually useful for your team. But I find way too many people just skipping the kill cams. It makes no sense to skip it when it's literally free information, and I mean, you're not responding yet anyway, so why are you skipping this information for no reason? Now, speaking of skipping over things, you need to not skip over GameLeap.com because it's your #1 resource in order to become the best player imaginable. We got in-depth advanced tips and soon to come out a whole bunch of VOD reviews based around VOD reviewing low-ranked players. So if you want to learn as much as possible, do yourself a favor and go check it out. Anyways, I hope this has been extremely helpful for you. If you have any questions about any of the concepts that I talked about in this video, definitely let me know in the comments down below and I would love to clarify. Anyways, that's all we got for you today. I'm Coach Mills, and until next time,